let's discuss them. So what I'm going to do to help you start thinking about SOPs today, our standard operating procedures or preventative maintenance procedures in some cases, if that's all you're going to focus on, is we're going to go through a couple of steps here. We're going to make sure they're simple, organized, prioritized, and accessible, talk about some examples, and then we're going to look at opportunities on your campus for improvement. All right, all procedures that you write or procedures that you use, they need to be simple. These are some examples on the screen here of how simple they can be, just really quick. And you see in to the left here, we have the correct dilution ratio if you make one pump or if you use a system that pumps for you. And that system can have a huge picture on it that says, this is for mopping floors, for instance. Down below, never mix cleaning products. Very simple, it's visual. It overcomes most language barriers. It overcomes learning issues or different education levels. The one on the right here, a little more detail. Wipe surface, wring out, rinse, repeat. And so these are examples of procedures that you can write. And when you write them, we have to be careful to ensure that they are simple. So for instance, flush, hang mop, an exit sign, a fire exit sign. These are simple procedures that you see all over your campuses. What is simple? Clear, repeatable. An owner's manual, simplified. So if you start, and when we get near the end, we're going to talk about how you can be writing these yourself. The starting point a lot of times is an owner's manual for a piece of equipment. Let's say we got a cyclone rake, we call it. It's a large thing you tow behind your mower, and it's very complex. It has multiple parts, has its own motor, hoses. There's a way it's made out of Velcro and canvas, and it can rot, and it needs to be stored properly, and it's heavy, and it could hurt someone, fall on someone. A lot of things about that. So to start writing the policy and procedure on use of that piece of equipment, we're going to start with the owner's manual. But then we're going to simplify the owner's manual for our employees and then make it applicable to our campus. And so the owner's manual doesn't know what environment you're going to put it in, where you're going to tow it. Do the tires need a very slightly different air pressure, for instance, on your campus or in your environment? Let's say you're up north, you're down south, it's ice or there's salt. This is where you, the tech writer, you, the facilities manager, have to go and word that so that the user can understand it, all right? And in many cases, you guys might be using volunteers. So you want volunteers to be able to understand that as well. Key reason for these procedures being simple. Here's an example on the screen. Floor drains. So many floor drains will dry out if you're not dumping your mop water in those. And when they dry out, we have sewer gas coming into the building. So we created a PM. You'll see here, this is a simple PM on just filling floor drains. And down into the steps of this procedure, and this is in our CMMS. And if you really would benefit from a CMMS if you don't have one, especially one that allows you to key in your instructions, your procedures. This one's called an instruction set. We call this M4, meaning it's a monthly. It's the fourth monthly we do, and the -F for us means it's a facilities-related procedure that I've written. And so it's very simple. Quarter cup of Clorox with 5 gallons of water. Carefully pour a half a gallon minimum into each floor drain. Ensure diluted Clorox mixture remains in the drain, not around, and clean up any spill areas. Now, in training our team to do this, we also say you will use a cart that doesn't leak, it doesn't drip, in case you accidentally cross over carpet. This is the only time we use Clorox in the building or in our kitchen. For some events in kitchen do use Clorox. So here's an example of simple. Now, added to this procedure is a map. This is a very simple way of doing it. Here's an old map of my campus. And what we've done is we color-coded where those floor drains are located. And then this is attached to the PM. The technician can actually put a check mark past each one. I finished this one, I finished this one, I finished this one. Now, we've since updated these with something a little more professional, but this was an early step at having a map attached to each procedure. All right. This is a picture of one of our employees actually conducting this PM. Simple, he's in the field, he's following the directions. 5-gallon bucket, he's got Clorox with him, he's got a measuring tool. He's making his trip around the building to finish this PM. Simple, floor drains in action. All right, but next we want our procedures to be organized. All right, so how do we do that? Some of your desks look like this one on the left. We want to stay organized. And you saw already in that simple PM example that we have a nomenclature with each PM. So we've started to organize ourselves into a category where we know what that PM might be related to. So it's facilities related, it's a monthly, so it has an M in front of it. And here's an example of one of these people coming to your home and looking in your cabinet and going, no, we can make this better. And here you see the snacks have their designation, and we know where snacks are at. And I know one or two of those baskets would get used more than the other for me. And so naming them when my wife has a basket for me just for snacks. And so I reach for that quite often. Organized means you've done an inventory. You know what needs procedures. And often whenever, for instance, Cool Solutions comes out to your campus, or Cool Church Solutions, they want to help encourage this kind of behavior, what we're talking about now, because as they do an audit, if you have them come and do that, one of the things that helps us stay organized are inventories of everything on our campus. Once you have an inventory of everything that might need a procedure, it starts to drive towards which procedures are necessary. So the starting point of organization is knowing what you have and where it all is. And so for me, when I first started here at Faith, I just began with a folder and binder system, but some naming system to this. So I had a kitchen set, I had a landscaping set, I had a vehicle set of procedures. And so we put a V for vehicles, and we started splitting it into parts so that we could then stay organized. Then we put a grease pencil calendar on the board, and we started to take our code system and just write it on the calendar. We're going to do the monthly on the second week of every month. And so we start with some sort of organization so we know that PM has been completed, that preventative maintenance procedure has been opened and read. And you want it consistent across your campus. So as you train someone, the knowledge they gain from that organization of your procedure system is quickly applied throughout, just like a Dewey Decimal System maybe in a library. And it needs to be directly related to that SOP. Here's an example. If you're doing these electronically, just have the folders be organized. And here's an example of folders on a hard drive. Here's an old server that we used to have called Servant 2. And you see the folders are very simple and easy for them to understand. On my shelving, here's an old set of shelving PMs back when we did everything in hard copies. We have a kitchen binder, we have a fridge and freezer next to the kitchen binder, we have a custodial binder, all the PMs for custodial are in that binder. You see a grounds binder, all the PMs for outside landscaping and grounds are in that binder, including the equipment we use to maintain our grounds. Vehicles has its own binder, we maintain our monthly vehicles, which ones need registration, which ones need oil change, all in that binder. So we're organized. Our guys who go to do the vehicle PMs can quickly grab that binder off the shelf. Here's an example of this inside a CMMS. And so you take a computerized maintenance management system, when you hear that acronym, and you put your instruction sets. So you see here, this is planned maintenance procedures, and there's a different set of these possibly for administration and others. These are just the ones related to preventative maintenance. And these are instruction sets. And you'll see there a category starting with A10F. All the A's are annuals. And as you keep scrolling down, there's about 100 of these in this CMMS that you're seeing. And this is an older picture from way before our logo changed. You'll see there's 17, 18, 19. They're just an organization. And you see a V next to 19, for instance, we know right away that's trailers, or that's vehicle related. So then it says trailer axle greasing. And if we were to click on that, we would see the procedure that has been written on greasing the trailer axles. And so I started my system with a D for daily, a W for weekly. And we tend to not write those policies and procedures outright for most dailies. That's more of a training procedure for our custodians, for instance. But bi-weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly for a Q, SA for semi-annual. Just be consistent with whatever format you use. Now, this diagram on the screen, you saw this maybe earlier in this conference. I noticed that it was posted in one of the other comments that was posted earlier. This is a similar diagram. This is a priority matrix. We use this in risk management, use it in safety and security. And so all we're doing here is saying, now we need to take these procedures that I need to write, let's prioritize them. I've got a whole campus of equipment, but now let's narrow down what I need to focus on right away. And you take a matrix like this and we say, what is the highest priority to schedule? And you see at the top corner in red, work stoppage. And then on the other side, you see impact priority. What impact does it have to my operations? Now we're going to get and talk a little bit more about what leads to that discussion about operations. But this is a simple way for you to start to say, which procedure do I write first? Which procedure do I put the most effort in? Which procedures maybe I hire a technical writer to come and work a short time for me? On that note, I did hire a technical writer to come and rewrite all my procedures one summer. It was a school teacher who taught English. And so I said, well, hey, would you mind sitting at a computer for 2.5 months while you're not in school and rewrite my procedures and update my maps? And so she checked all my spelling and my wording and helped me get these prioritized. And so hiring someone to do that part-time might be a great way for you who are maybe not used to typing a lot. All right, so prioritize. Back to this inventory that we talked about before. Prioritization means that you list and then audit your list. What's the impact of this PM to the people? People could be employees. People could be those who come to your campus. What's the impact to your operations? If this preventative maintenance procedure or this SOP is not followed, and I'll give you an example of something that's not preventative maintenance, but is an SOP here in a minute. But if this SOP or this PMP or this RMP is not followed, what's its impact? This is how I'm prioritizing these. Which ones are most important? The impact to my campus, if this is not followed. Maybe it's where people park and how it damages the grounds. Maybe it's how people use certain types of equipment inside the building. It damages the carpet. So we come up with a policy and a procedure because of this prioritization that we've done. What have people missed in the past? What made mistakes? And so often in my facilities team meetings, we start out with I call it the look back. And in the Navy, we had other bad terms for it, but it's what mistakes have been made that we can learn a lesson from. And so I look back through incident reports. Oh, we've had people slip. We need to either write a procedure for this area, change this, do a building, some sort of operational change, where people put their gloves on, or for instance, we had a mop bucket the other day that leaks out the bottom because it has a step on it that lets you drain your mop bucket into a floor drain. And they're actually pushing on that hole in the bottom of the bucket with the mop handle themselves. So that's a possible procedure that we say, read this before we let you use this mop bucket. I know that sounds cheesy, but that is a possibility. All right, here's some examples of prioritizing your PMs. The one called Guidelines for Ministry Workers. It's incredible how many people are volunteers serving in the children's ministry that may not have any training. They have a heart for it, but they need training. Here's an example of an SOP, standard operating procedure, called Guidelines for Ministry Workers here on our campus. This is our old logo for the children's ministry back in 2007. And in here, this is our guidelines for changing diapers, for letting kids get released with a name tag. And so you've written those procedures so that then that is the guideline and training for those volunteers, and volunteers turn over quickly. On the right side, you see a kitchen cleanup checklist. This is a checklist model of an SOP. This is the checklist version of the shutdown procedure or cleanup procedure for the use of our primary kitchen. And what this does, it puts in a checklist form the procedure you're going to do if you're the last guy out of the kitchen. You've been trained to use the kitchen. You've received training to receive a kitchen key, but this is that checklist that you're going to use to follow the procedure necessary to ensure the kitchen is closed out properly so you can go home. You'll see on there, for instance, we just shut off the gas, so the pilots are not even running. So that's a step that has been missed by even contractors who had insurance to be using our kitchen and left the gas on. And one of our custodians got sick and almost passed out and died in the kitchen because the gas had been left on with no pilots lit. And so this is the procedure in checklist form. And it's important that that gas get cut off, so it's a prioritized PM or SOP that we've had to write. All right, and lastly, in our category of how your SOPs are written, we need them to be accessible. And so we don't want to forget that as we've written these and we put them up on a server somewhere, can the basic technician who needs access to them gain access to them? And so you see this redneck, like us good North Carolina boys up in the mountains, The dog can get into the truck, but you see someone's already put a cinder block next to the truck to reach the necessary tools to help get this truck out of this place. It's inaccessible. And so here is an example of maybe some chips that have not made it your way. We don't want that to be the case for your standard operating procedures. We want them easy to get to. We want to overcome language barriers, and you saw those first ones called simple. We want to understand the differences between language and make sure those are readily available. The laminated posted clipboard, like in our kitchen, for instance, it's right by the door where you leave. That's the checklist. It's available to you. That procedure's been written for you. Someone's already done this work. Just check these boxes on your way out. Maybe it's a poster or a map. So for some of our setup crew, we take a picture of the room the way we want it set up, and we just post the picture and say, this is the SOP for this room. The chairs should be facing this way, this number of tables, this television cart should exist in this room. Just look at the picture. And you see SDSs are a great example of procedures, SOPs, that exist related to chemicals that you use. Are those accessible? So I've tasked my custodial supervisor to mount the SDSs with a very obvious yellow binder in the chemical area of the custodial closet. And is the procedure relevant? Is it near relevant to what it's doing? All right. So for instance, are the vehicle PMs near where the vehicles are kept or maintained so that they can pull that off the shelf and use it? Otherwise, employees are going to likely shortcut. And so I don't have time to go get a procedure. I just need to do this now. I remember doing it last time. So we want to have the procedure easily available or accessible to them.